All right, we want to turn back to the big redistricting case before the Supreme Court this morning. CBS News chief legal correspondent Jan Crawford joins us from outside the courthouse with more on all of this. Jan, good morning. So help our viewers understand what exactly is being decided here and why these justices are actually hearing this case again.
Well, that's right. I mean, they did try to decide this case in their session last term, and they held off to really look at what could be one of the biggest constitutional issues they'll take up this term. Really what we're talking about here is the Voting Rights Act of 1965, that 60-year-old law that was passed at the height of segregation, and one part of it in particular called Section 2. Now, that provision of the Voting Rights Act can require states to draw up legislative districts that sometimes zigzag across the state, grouping voters together based on their race, to draw up a majority black district. That's all to increase minority representation, and advocates say it's had an enormous impact in doing just that, increasing minority representation. But a group of white voters challenged a second legislative district in Louisiana. They say it's unconstitutional, that you're not supposed to consider race. The government's not supposed to consciously sort people based on their skin color. So that's kind of the convoluted question that the court will take up today, but it could have dramatic implications, Errol, for how states draw up their legislative districts. The political implications of this are huge.
And Jan, you actually spoke with Louisiana's Attorney General about this case. Let's just quickly play for our viewers some of what she said.
The Constitution has told us to not sort people by race. The courts have told us we can't sort voters by race.
Tell us more about the state's position and the potential precedent a ruling might set in this case.
Well, the state is now saying that having to draw up that second majority black district, which a court ordered it to do, that's unconstitutional, and that dividing people up based on their skin color, even if it may be for a noble intention, that's not the kind of discrimination that's permissible under our Constitution. It only fuels racial divisions. That's what they argue, and that the time has come to really stop classifying people based on their race in this country, that people in Louisiana can win elected office without those majority black districts, and that's where we should be today. So they're going to make that case, but of course you're going to hear arguments on the other side that this is not the time to abandon the use of race, and that this country has not moved past that, Errol.
Yeah, we'll have updates on this throughout the day. Jan, great to see you. Thanks so much.
But we begin at the Supreme Court, where any minute now oral arguments are set to begin in a case in Louisiana, which could impact the entire country. The High Court is taking up a challenge to a provision in the Voting Rights Act that bans racial discrimination in congressional redistricting. A group of self-described non-African-American voters are challenging Louisiana's new congressional map that created a second majority black district. We've got team coverage for you this morning. CBS News reporter Kati Weiss is in Louisiana. But first, let's get to CBS News contributor Jessica Levinson, who's joining me now from L.A. So Jessica, this is actually the second time, as you know, that the justices are hearing this case. What are they looking for this time? What's different?
So what's different is they're challenging a really big issue, which is whether and to what extent can you consider race when you draw district lines. And if you do consider race, and if you consider race maybe, quote unquote, too much, does that fly in the face of the 14th Amendment, the Equal Protection Clause, or the 15th Amendment, which protects the right to vote against vote dilution, essentially? And so we're looking at a really big question about how we draw district lines throughout the country, not just in Louisiana, and what we can consider when we do so.
All right, stand by, Jessica. Let me ask Kati a question. So, Kati, what are they saying in Louisiana right now about this?
Yeah, so as you heard Jessica discuss, this has really been a long time coming, and people here across the state are truly on pins and needles. Even though the decision might not come out for quite a while after the arguments are made today, people are eager to find out what will happen, because this not only will have implications potentially for the rest of Louisiana, but also the rest of the country. And really the issue at center today is whether or not you can draw those lines on the basis of race. And activists here in Louisiana feel that it's important to do so in order to make sure that all voices are heard in an election. Take a listen.
Louisiana deserves two black minority congresspersons, because we represent a third of the population. My math says a third of 6 is 2. So we deserve to have 2.
The Constitution has told us to not sort people by race. The courts have told us we can't sort voters by race. And yet we are being told to go out and sort our voters by race.
And today's hearing could really lead to one of the most significant rulings in the Voting Rights Act since it was first enacted during the Civil Rights Movement back in 1965. Vlad?
Katie, before I go back to Jessica, do we know who the plaintiffs are?
Yeah, so it's a group of non-Black voters across the state. They are largely, have not been outspoken about this issue. The person named in the case, Calais, he did speak at a state hearing on the issue a couple of years ago, just talking about essentially asserting that this type of district drawing discriminates on the basis of race, and that he is suffering as a result because his voice is not as heard. So it will be interesting to see what the justices later decide.
So, Jessica, how will the impact of this ruling impact the rest of the country?
Well, it's potentially huge. So, of course, the justices could maintain the status quo, which is looking at the Voting Rights Act and looking at the 14th Amendment and determining that you can use race as long as it doesn't predominate. I'm quoting from an old text. But if the justices change the ruling, change the law on the ground, which we expect that they will, because as you said, they asked for re-argument and then they asked very specific questions. That obviously has a ripple effect far beyond Louisiana. We're looking at every single state where you draw district lines. What does that mean politically? Obviously, we're going into the midterm elections. It means that you can draw lines without fear that you need to essentially, I think, comply with Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, which prohibits vote dilution. Because I think the other side of this case is saying, don't consider race, potentially at all. What does that mean? It means that you could see a big win for Republicans. If you can draw lines without worrying about a Section 2 violation, if you can draw lines and say, I can't consider race, then political scientists that I've looked at, who I've looked at their studies, say this would be a big boon for Republicans and could potentially lock in a Republican majority in the House of Representatives for years, maybe decades.
Wow. All right. Kati Weiss, Jessica Levinson, thank you both for your insight and your reporting. We appreciate it.